Hey, in this video we're gonna have a closer look at the hair gen and how to groom the fibers. So let's dive in. So this is where we left. We had a good base for the setup. Now we're gonna try to improve that. And the first thing's gonna be the guides. So right now we wanna display the procedural guides that are generated from the guide groom, and we're gonna shape them. So the first thing could be to set a direction with like something a bit random, but as you can see, well, this not gonna be the most convenient way to do that. So my idea in here would rather be to use a bend. So with the bend node, we can use the angle and the random angle. Could also play with random bias. So of course I'm watching at reference while I'm working. I can't actually show them in this tutorial because I don't own the rights, but definitely do a Google search of the fibrous malachite. That will help a lot, and you can come up with your own version because there are so many different stuff. So from here I'm trying to make it straight, so instead of using the straighten groom node, I'm using a resample just to decrease the number of points. So right now all of these only have like 2 points per primitive, and then I'm gonna set the length of those guys. So we want to set the mode to multiply and use a skin attribute to drive the length. In that case, we had the border scale, which did a pretty good job at having the longer guides in the borders, and it's getting thinner in the center. So we can play with blend to mix that attribute with the original size. Something like that could be interesting. Anyway, we'll have more control in the hair gen, so let's keep going. From here we may want to merge all the other guides from the strands, so let's re-enable this merge. What I fear is that we got too many guides inside your crystal strands, so I'm gonna go back in here and we're gonna do a little derivation, something like that. We don't need to keep that plugged into the main branch, and let's sort randomly the primitives, and we're gonna add a delete node. Well, actually, you know what, we already set it up in the past tutorial, so let's just copy this one, can rename it delete random strands, and copy paste that in here. So it's gonna randomly remove some primitive, and now if we play with the controller we created, we can thin out all of these curves. That's gonna be pretty handy. Yeah, this amount should be fair. It's like I don't want it to stand out too much inside my guides. Yeah, I guess that could work. So let's see with the hair gen how it's looking now. Can of course increase the density of hair so that we get something a little sharper, and yeah, it's not bad. Now we're gonna start shaping a bit more these ones. As you can see, we got the clump that we set up in the previous tutorial. We could play with the clump profile if you want to get something thinner along the curves. So yeah, we definitely got something interesting. Let's try to play with the clump size so we can get thinner clumps. Okay, something around 0.1, 0.05, something like that could be an interesting value. So we're gonna try to bring variation into this clump size. we're gonna need to create an attribute for that. So let's go back into the crystal scattering where we set up all the rocks attributes, and copy pasting the point of p scale. Gonna make a different color just to indicate that it's to drive the hair and it's not affecting the scattering. So let's change some parameters in here. So let's set min output to 0, max output to 1. Right now we are using a random function to drive the attribute, so we might want to switch back to noise. Just one thing is that we need to specify the clump size attribute. That's the name of the attribute we want to use to drive the clump size. And let's re-enable the noise. All right, so in here, let's make some bigger breakups, and I'm gonna contrast it a little bit. That could be interesting, yeah. Okay, let's see. If we try to change the value between 0.05 and 0.1, let's display the hair gen. Okay, so now we need to specify into the hair clump the attribute. So let's use the skin attribute since it's on the rock, and now we can call any attribute we want. So in that case, the clump size. It's not actually what I expected. I didn't remember it's the attribute is acting like a multiplier, so we'd rather need to set up the max output to 1, so we actually have our value of 0.1 as a clump size. And the minimum output, in that case, 0, would mean that there is no clumping going on. So 0.5 would result in a 0.05 value for the smaller ones. So I think I'm pretty happy with 0.4. We got some smaller clumps around the edges of the rock, and it gets bigger in the center. Of course, we could also create an attribute for the blend. So let's copy paste the clump size, and I'm gonna call that clump mask. So let's not forget to rename this node clump mask. I'm gonna set that to hide other context, so it's going a bit faster. And gonna play with the border breakups ramp. Okay, no, that's good. Let's offset this guy so that it's not overlapping with the clump size values. Okay. So for now, we're just gonna keep the minimum output to 1 and decrease it to see the effect. So let's decrease to 0.5, and it's getting a bit fuzzy. We get some interesting stuff. Maybe we'd like to preserve it on the edges, so I'm actually gonna remove the points in the curve. Okay, let's reset the minimum output. So I don't want some fuzzy hair in the edges, so instead of doing some dark values in the edges, we're gonna wanna protect that with bright values for the clump mask. So the higher the values and the less dark in our mask, the less fuzzy it will be. So I'm pretty happy with that. We still conserve some nice spikes around the edges, and that's what I want. Now we could also play with the length of those guides. So I'm gonna set that to multiply, and we're gonna play with the randomize, and the mean scale factor will randomly thin out the length to 0.2, and if we want to extend it, we can also set the max scale factor to, in that case, 1.1. And I'm gonna apply another length, which will drive the length around the edges. To do so, Let's set the mode to multiply again, and we're gonna use a skin attribute. So right now we can't call them because we forgot to plug those connections. So let's not forget to plug the skin VDB. And now we can actually grab one of these. So in that case, we could try border scale, which worked fine on the guides. If we play with the blend, we get something thinner in the middle again. But maybe we want to create our own attribute to get more control over the length. So we're going to do that. So instead of border scale, we will use an attribute we'll call length factor. Feel free to choose anything as long as it's consistent with your naming inside the point VOP. So let's copy paste the point VOP, and we're gonna rename it length factor. And inside, let's change the bind export name to length factor. You got it? Min output to 0 again, and we're gonna do some quick changes. So in that case, let's try some dark values around the edges, so it's actually thinning in the edges and getting bigger in the center. I'm gonna decrease the contrast though. It seems to work. Instead, I'm gonna try to make them longer in the edges. So this is a multiplier, so I'd rather use a min output of 0.5 so that it's not too thin. And yeah, I think that could work. Can always see the difference with blend, or blend back some of the original size. Okay, let's keep going. I'm gonna make a secondary clump. So in here we're gonna set a smaller size, like 0.04, and I'm just gonna uncheck preserve length difference so that we have something somewhat similar to what we had before. And of course, we can always play with attributes to drive the blend. So in that case, the border scale is actually fine, so that this only apply on the edges, so that we got some smaller clumps just around the edges, and in the center we got those bigger ones. So I think I'm fine with that. Now we could try to groom that a little better, like using some more direction maybe. That could be an interesting effect. Just gonna set the mode to rotate rigidity around roots, and can play with the blend so that we still got some kind of random direction. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I like to compare before, after, see if it really brings something or not. Sometimes I think I got a good idea, but turns out it's not really effective, or it's not what I expect. So that's the creative process. I'm gonna increase the density a bit more. Okay, that's pretty cool. Maybe we wanna display everything, like with those crystals, see the proportions. And like that, I would say that our fibers are actually pretty small compared to the crystals. Let's increase the max scale factor to 1.5 maybe. But as you can see, it's like pretty much breaking or clumping. Just be aware that if you change the length, you may also need to change the clump size again, just so that it's refreshing this node. Okay, let's drop a lift node. So that's gonna help us bringing some more fuzzy area. Right now it's way too fuzzy and everything. We see that it's actually a bit more interesting than the blend mask we have in the air clump, but why not? What I'm thinking is that we could probably try to put it in the first place to get some more derivation here and there, like some more random directions. So I'm gonna set the blend to 0.5 or 0.2, I don't know, just to bring a little more chaos inside this. Yeah. Yeah, something like that. can randomize the values, of course. And yeah, I think that can help a little bit. Let's see. So now in this one, well, it's way too fuzzy now. Okay, we're gonna need to create a mask for this set lift. And this mask gonna be an attribute. So by default should be called lift. So let's go and create a lift attribute. Now copy paste the previous point VOP and rename that lift. Inside, let's not forget to rename the bind export. All right, so let's set that to 0 again. And in that case, I think I want it to apply a bit everywhere, maybe not so much in the middle. And we could play with the frequency, like something that looks more like high frequency, and contrast it quite a bit. Let's see how it looks. So we definitely keep some sharp, spiky area, but some are like more fuzzy. I'd like to keep some sharper areas though. So I'm redisplaying the crystal, see how it works, and let's play with the blend. So actually just realized that we'd rather control the blend of this node instead of the lift parameter. To do so, we have the masking area, where we can use a skin attribute to drive a mask. So in that case, let's call the lift, and the red section are where the lift is actually applied, and the black is where it's not. So we actually may want to reverse those values with what we did, so that we got mostly some dark instead of red. Okay. So now you see that the black is preserving the spikes and the red is the effect of the lift that is scattering those clumps. So that's pretty interesting effect. I'm gonna just put it with like small values, something around 0.4, 0.3 maybe, just to create some very fuzzy area and just in some places. I'm gonna use the set length and set the maximum length. This way it will get rid of some of the biggest length. In that case, we are like trimming the biggest one to 0.5, 0.4 maybe. All right, it's definitely getting there. We got all the tools ready now. All the setup is there. We just need to play with it to find some cool results. So we're gonna experiment more with different shapes, proportions, scattering, fiber effect. We'll see. We just need to prepare a good composition to start the render.